What's going on, everyone? Today is another great workshop. We're in September, which is crazy. I almost said August before I was reading my notes and I was like, okay, I'm gonna open with August. We're not in August, it's September 2nd, 2025. But back with another great workshop today. We're gonna be talking about seeking a second opinion on your music, specifically doing this in collaboration with others, if you're in a studio with others, but also, when you're trying to get your song or your album heard, getting a second opinion on, who you should be sending it to, etc., all that good stuff. 3 different articles will be in the description of this video. The one we're going to be going over today is by Bandzoogle, and it's called How to Get Feedback on Your Music. I wanted to go over this one because I think this one kind of covers a lot more ground than the other two. And I'll get to the other two at the end. And, you guys can obviously check those out too. But I think this one covers a lot of different aspects, even some things that you might not think about as far as, how to do this in a healthy way. Because I think a lot of the times we take opinions very much to heart. If someone doesn't like our stuff, or if you're very excited about something and you play it for someone and you don't receive a very good reaction, that definitely can affect you, especially if you're starting out. I remember I used to send to, different hip hop blogs, like the stuff Jay, Trey, and I worked on early on. I would send like his singles to certain blogs, and not hearing back or just hearing like negative feedback or them saying they weren't really into it, that definitely, affects you early on. But eventually you kind of get used to hearing no, and you also know, which places should you be targeting to send your stuff to as opposed to others. So I think this article does a pretty good job of kind of touching on those things. So let's get into this. It says, when tunnel vision prevents you from seeing or hearing objectively, getting a second opinion on your music can be a saving grace. It's easy to get stuck in one mode of thought, which can be very frustrating when all you want to do is move forward. Whether you're second guessing a lyric, artistic direction, or an album track list, gathering feedback from others can provide the clarity you need to shift your perspective and keep things fresh. Both your fans and industry professionals can offer you honest feedback and sometimes even provide opportunities for your music. Asking for feedback not only helps you improve, but also invites new people into your artistic journey, showing them that you're open to growth. Being open to input can deepen your connection with listeners and industry allies alike, keeping your creative path dynamic and collaborative. So the first step, it says, get feedback from the industry. As a musician, you know that the music industry is vast. It consists of endless moving parts that all work together to make up today's music business. Whether it's the writers behind a music blog or the venue bookers for live shows, everyone plays a role in the success of today's artists. Here are a couple ways to get feedback on your music from those in the industry. Firstly, we have reach out to independent playlisters. This is something I've been doing a lot in the last probably year and a half, that I've been doing more instrumental albums. Definitely been finding a lot more people within that genre of like lo-fi, chill hop, just instrumental beats, finding people through Instagram. A lot of it is other producers too. So I tend to look at, who makes kind of similar music to me, and then see if they have a playlist, and then see if they are accepting music. That's really been a big strategy for me to get onto a lot of different Spotify playlists for sure. It says, when someone's job is to curate music for others, they're constantly searching for new talent. User-generated playlists are becoming more and more popular on streaming services, notably Spotify, and can be the reason an emerging artist starts getting traction. The creators behind these playlists are often fervent music fans who love to discover new sounds and artists. and do it because it is fulfilling and not because they have to. This makes playlist curators excellent points of contact for independent artists looking to expand their reach and get an opinion on their music. Given the nature of their work, you can trust the playlist curators will be honest in their response. If you make good music, it's a win-win for both parties, so they want you to succeed. Find a couple playlists on Spotify that you feel your music would fit into, and look for the curator's contact information. They will often put their email or social media tag in their bio, so you can reach out via email or through DMs. Word of advice on that though, in my experience, I tried that method for probably like 4 or 5 months early on in the process, and I didn't really have that much success with that, believe it or not. I found that a lot of the ones I found within Spotify were either inactive playlists that hadn't been updated in 2 or 3 years, or if I reached out to the person, I just didn't hear from them. Like if it said, message me on @so-and-so on Instagram, you reach out to that person, you're probably not going to hear from them. You might. I always try to look for the playlists that are recently active, that have added songs in the last month or so. Because if you're trying to reach out to someone that hasn't updated a playlist in years, they're probably not going to get back to you. Like I said, I've been doing more of the searching through social media and just doing the legwork on my own. And I feel like you can get a better idea of who you're sending to, and it's more likely that you're going to be able to tell if they're actively updating their playlist still. So that's something that I would probably keep in mind. But you can try this method. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just in my own experience, haven't really had any success doing that. And a lot of people had suggested doing that, but I found taking the social media route directly and then kind of having that lead to Spotify instead of it's almost like reverse engineering it, I guess, is kind of the method that I would go for. But try whatever you want first and then see what works. But I just want to let you know that's an alternative method that I've used that does work. It says, if your message briefly explain who you are and what kind of music you make sure you know what the crux of your message is. Do you want feedback on your release, or would you like an opinion on something you put out recently? Be clear with what you're asking for so they know how to best respond. If all goes well, you will get a second opinion on your work and may even get a placement out of it. Trying to think of what else to kind of say about that whole thing. Obviously, there's, like I said, via that social media method, a lot of these curators have Google Forms set up, which we've talked about. I think we talked about Google Forms. If we didn't, we're going to talk about Google Forms eventually, because I use Google Forms. A lot of curators will use it, and they collect your information on whatever song you're submitting. They'll check it out, and then if they like it, they'll get back to you. I look for the Google Forms always because they're very easy and accessible. There's other platforms like Playlist Push, Groover, Coffee. A lot of people will set up a certain type of form for you to send your music into. Sometimes it'll be, they'll say send me an email or just send me the link in DMs, but a lot of the time it's a form. So be on the lookout for the forms. And those are convenient because it allows you to kind of pinpoint exactly what you want to say. You can add, usually at the end, they'll have an ask me anything box or a additional info box, and you can just let them know, why you're sending or what the kind of the goal is, like they're talking about here. But I tend to look for the Google Forms because they're easy for me to just go in, fill it all out, add my Spotify link, and then just go about my day. So that's been my experience with that. And then there's obviously other tools like Submit Hub, which lets you do a lot of free submissions. You can do paid submissions too, but I've always done the free ones, and I've actually been getting more successful doing that in the last couple releases here, which is pretty cool. And then obviously Daily Playlist is the same thing. You get 10 free ones per week, You can also upgrade to get more paid ones. I've never done paid playlisting. We're going to talk about that next week because our topic next week is Spotify playlists. So I'm going to save that for next week, but that is definitely a great option. Next one we have is use music submission platforms, which is kind of what I just touched on. Playlisters aren't the only ones who want you to succeed. There are a number of music submission platforms that encourage artists to send in their tracks. Many music blogs have submission pages where you can send your music and a pitch about yourself for them to consider. Other sites that specialize in concert reviews and interviews also accept submissions and direct messages through their contact pages. If you do so little digging, you'll find that many music platforms and websites want you to get in touch. Pro tip, search for them by genre. If they specialize in the music you make, you'll be even more likely to get a positive response. One risk of being an independent artist without many connections is that you might not get any responses. That's where certain online platforms come in with tools that help musicians reach curators and industry professionals. And we highly recommend Groover, which I just mentioned, one of the most reputable services in the field. Groover can connect independent musicians with over 3,000 industry partners spanning from influencers, radio stations, and playlisters to labels, managers, and magazines. Going through a reputable platform with such great connections guarantees a response, so it's worth the $2 to send a pitch. With Groover, if you don't get a response in 7 days of submitting your pitch, you get refunded credits back to your account. Music industry professionals are on the platform to support emerging artists, but also in the hopes of discovering high potential artists before anything else, or before anyone else. By sending them your track through the platform, you're not only guaranteed to get feedback, but there's also a good chance it could lead to an exciting opportunity. I've never used Groover myself. It's funny, this was probably 2023. I had a representative from Groover reach out to me to be a curator. They had seen what I was doing with the Proven Knowledge stuff, with the podcast, interviewing artists, and they wanted me to join to be a curator to actually give feedback to other musicians. Usually that doesn't happen from what I know. However, this didn't happen. I ended up losing contact with that person. They never got back to me about like the next steps or anything like that. So it was kind of a weird scenario. I don't know. Maybe that will lead to something in the future. But yeah, it was kind of an interesting situation. I was kind of like looking forward to, trying it out as a curator. But yeah, the person just never got back to me. But as far as like using it as a musician, I've never used it before. I know a lot of people that do use it. Again, I'm just not a pay-to-play person, really. Like, I will pay for things here and there, like interviews or, certain opportunities if it's kind of low ticket. But for me, especially the playlist thing, I'll get into this more next week, but, paying for playlisting, financially, that doesn't really add up at the end of the day. And I'm not going to tell anybody what to do, but if you're paying dollars to make sense, that doesn't make sense, if I'm being honest. And I think if you know, but yeah, it's just not really for me. I try to go the free playlisting route every time because it's something that can help you get discovered, but it's not something that will have the financial return that you are looking for 9 times out of 10. And again, I'll touch on that next week, but that's just my take on it. And it's kind of a hill that I'll die on because that's just how I feel and that's what I've seen. So, again, if people have different opinions on that, that's fine. Do what you want to do. I'm not your financial advisor. I just care about myself and my business and what I'm doing. So that's just my take on it. But Groover, yeah, it is definitely a platform to check out. And I think even for the sync licensing stuff that they do and those type of opportunities can definitely be worth looking at. It's kind of like Submit Hub, which I mentioned too, that I use. I think Submit Hub doesn't have as much of the sync license stuff. It's more of the blogs. Like I've had a couple of blogs be able to do write-ups on my music over there and a lot of playlisting opportunities. Um, so yeah, they're kind of similar, but I think Groover is a little more in depth. But that's why you would pay for something like that, like it mentions in the article. So definitely, give that a look if you don't know about it already. Next up, we have attend camps and music residencies. What a better way to give feedback in real time as you're creating your music. Joining a songwriting camp is one of the best ways to meet other people in the industry and work with people that have real expertise. Music residencies are similar. You'll get to live and collaborate with other artists and producers with a sole purpose of learning and exchanging ideas. Camps and music residencies are hosted year-round by organizations and labels alike. They bring together writers, singers, producers, and engineers to create music for the entire duration of the program, often hosting a showcase at the end of the term. When you apply, they will require that you provide a sample of your work, so make sure to have something on hand that represents you well. Show them that you are enthusiastic about working with others to develop your artistry. You'll leave with connections, confidence, and new music to put out. I've seen a lot of examples of this. I've never done one of these, mostly because I don't live in an area where it's accessible. If I did one of these, I would have to fly out to wherever it is. I know obviously like places like LA and New York have a lot of this sort of thing. A big example that comes to mind is the label called Playground. They did a beat retreat for all producers. This was probably a couple years ago. They might have did it in back-to-back years, but they had a lot of different producers come out and work together, make a lot of songs, and then they ended up putting those songs on a project and putting it out, which I thought was really cool. Things like that are great examples. But yeah, the possibilities are endless. And if you have like any type of organization or anything you're involved in, that's specifically tailored to certain types of industry individuals like producers or songwriters or whatever, it would be very easy to organize something like this. But there are plenty of different things going on every single year. Usually almost every month, there's someone putting on some type of camp or get together or something like that. So yeah, definitely something to keep in mind, especially if you love in-person collaboration too. That would be a cool thing. Get feedback from fans. Having direct contact with your listeners is much easier now that so much happens on social media. Though you must not take every single comment to heart. There is value in keeping tabs on what your fans are thinking and feeling when it comes to your music. Here are some ways to get genuine feedback from supporters. Number 1, play live shows and host live streams. Face-to-face interaction is invaluable. Being able to read the energy of the room is incredibly informative if you're evaluating how people respond to your songs. Make an effort to play live shows as much as you can. If you are not yet comfortable with frequent performances, try playing a show prior to a release or immediately after. If you're about to drop something new, playing live will give you the chance to read the room and the crowd's energy during their first listen. And if you've just released something, it'll be a great chance to access whether people have taken a liking to it so far. Take advantage of Instagram and TikTok live streams as well. Fans love real-time interaction, and you can have a genuine conversation with your viewers about what you're working on. Everyone loves giving their opinion, so ask them questions about what they'd like to see more or less of. Keep in mind that Instagram and TikTok's viewers differ, in that TikTok makes your live available to anyone, not just your followers, With an Instagram live broadcast, your viewers will be people who already follow you, so the comments are more likely to be constructive and supportive. And that's all just based on whatever you want to do. I haven't done Instagram lives in a while. I used to do them a lot, but I noticed that the traction just isn't the same as it used to be. And I noticed a lot of people don't really use it that much anymore compared to when it was introduced like 5 years ago. The whole trajectory of that kind of went downhill. I've never really done the TikTok live. Maybe it's something I'll experiment with one day, but yeah, I don't know. For me, at least, that whole thing kind of went downhill after COVID. I think it really peaked during that whole time in 2020 when we were all in the house. Like everybody was thriving on Twitch, TikTok, Instagram Live, whatever it was, even Facebook Live. Everybody had success over there. Now I think it's more of like a you just check in every once in a while. Um, but yeah, if you can, if you know that you got a lot of followers too and a lot of people that always tune in, I think it can be definitely of service, and you can just be in the studio playing a song and be like, hey guys, check this out. What do you think about this? So it's definitely something to always consider. For me, I just think that it's not quite as, at the top as it used to be, because everything changes so fast, but it's definitely still something that can work. If you kind of hit it at the right time too, you might just one afternoon be on your platform, whatever it is, and then a lot of your audience is hanging around and they end up coming in there and joining you. I guess maybe even I haven't been hitting it at the right times or the good times to do that, but just something to keep in mind. Finally, we have share your music on community platforms. There are a number of ways to ask for honest feedback online, as long as you're using the right platform. For example, the comments options to SoundCloud allow listeners to leave feedback at a marked point in the song. If you are hesitant about a certain lyric, verse, or production choice, this might be a really useful feature, allowing you to dial into a specific timestamp on the track to get specific feedback. SoundCloud is a great place to share music before officially posting it on bigger streaming services. So don't be afraid to share different versions of your song and ask your following or friends to give them a listen to share their thoughts. The more human and interactive the platform, the better. One of the best places to engage with a community in such ways is Reddit. Music sharing subreddits are numerous, and their followers are there because they love music and discovery and discussion. You can ask for the most general feedback to the most specific request, and you are bound to get some answers. Remember to follow community guidelines and respond to those who commented. It's a perfect space for conversation. I think the only thing to watch on those is there's a ton of trolls 24/7. So be aware of trolls. People that will just comment to say the most wild things that have nothing to do with what you're even talking about. Happens to me on YouTube a lot. I'll get a lot of just random spam comments, and I just delete them and just move on about my day. So just keep that in mind. If you're just posting for anyone, that's kind of something that could happen. And like I said earlier, don't take anything to heart. Who cares about any of this stuff at the end of the day? Especially trolls, like, delete the comment and move on. That's my advice. Because you'll get caught up on stuff that you don't need to be getting caught up on. And it just takes away from your energy. So that's a whole nother discussion. Just wanted to throw that out there. Final tips. Though feedback can do wonders for your creativity, remember to stick to your guns. No one knows the reasoning behind your creative choices like you do, so follow your intuition above all else. Getting a label executive's thoughts on your music may sound like a dream, but if you want a genuine opinion that will help you grow, start smaller. You want to speak to an individual whose opinion is based on their pure love of music, not on business. Definitely target the listeners as opposed to the other music makers is a Huge thing, I think. When using social networks, do not take every comment to heart. To what I just said, practice filtering through feedback that is actually valuable to you and hits on what you are curious about. A rock music fan will not like an electro pop song. Recognize when a comment comes from a true listener over an opinionated internet user. And that is that. That is the article. Like I said, a pretty good one. This was written in November of last year. And I think it covers a lot of ground within just saying, here's what you can do to get feedback, especially if you're just starting out and you don't have a lot of connections. Those are a lot of good ways to do it. The other two articles, which will be in the description of the video, one is by Independent Music Promotions. It's called Why Getting a Second Opinion is Always a Good Idea. And the other is by Music Review World. It's called The Power of Professional Music Feedback. And both those cover similar things, but they're not as detailed. I chose the Bandzoogle one because it was more detailed and a little bit more thorough. So I hope you guys got some value out of that. I hope that helps a lot. And I know, asking for feedback can always kind of be intimidating. Even, me today, I'm almost 10 years in at this point. I still get kind of like nervous if I'm sending it to a certain person. I'm like, oh, how are they going to respond to it? But it's just like anything else. The more you do it, the easier it gets over time, and you'll feel a lot better down the road with being able to do it and get comfortable with doing it. So those are a lot of great options to consider. And let me know, in the comments, what are your experiences with getting feedback, giving feedback, etc. A lot of cool possibilities though within that. And I think it is something that can definitely help everyone out at the end of the day. So next week, September 8th, we're going to be doing it on Monday because I have some obligations on Tuesday. But Monday, we're going to be talking about Spotify playlists. So we're going to be digging more into the whole playlist thing we were talking about earlier. I'll give you my opinions on Spotify playlisting and maybe some good tips on kind of where to find the best options for doing it. There's a lot of different avenues I could go down, so I'll try to figure out what the best route will be. But looking forward to doing that one. I think there's a lot to unpack there. But like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you for watching as always. And stay safe, stay positive the rest of the week. And as always, take care until next time. We'll see you then.